зведеного прес-брифінгу речника штабу антитерористичної операції Анатолія Стелемаха.
Starting our working day with the briefings of Anatoliy Stelmakh and Vladyslav Seleznyov about the situation in ATO zone. Thank you, Elena. Good morning, esteemed colleagues. I would like to inform you about the following. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine tomorrow will have the meeting in Kiev with the President of the International Committee of Red Cross, Peter Maurer. The sides will discuss the issues of cooperation of the International Red Cross Committee with Ukraine in the context of humanitarian situation in the east of Ukraine and cooperation of Defense Ministry of Ukraine with NGOs, international NGOs. Accredited in Ukraine, military attaches visited the ATO zone in Donetsk and Lugansk regions and also the headquarters of ATO in Kramatorsk. The foreign officers examined the situation in Donbass in order to objectively inform the leadership of their countries. During the visit, the officers of the headquarters of anti-terrorist operation had a briefing for foreign guests dedicated to the real situation in Donbass. The military diplomats learned about the timing of the violations by illegal armed groups of the ceasefire regime, the cases of violation of human rights, ruination of the infrastructure objects, and attempts to create humanitarian catastrophe in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. The officers of ATO headquarters provided to military attaches the proofs of that the terrorists do not observe Minsk agreements. They were informed that between 15 and 24th of February, there were 430 cases registered of the militants shelling at the positions of ATO and peaceful settlements, and also the assault actions and shellings of the positions of armed forces of Ukraine using the systems of salvo fire artillery, tanks, and small arms. Also, foreign military attaché learned about the hottest points in ATO zone near Donetsk airport and near Mariupol. After that, the foreign diplomats visited the headquarters of ATO in Kramatorsk. The deputy Minister on Information Policy, advisor of the Minister of Defense, Tatiana Popova, the deputy head of Donetsk Oblast State Administration, Mikhailo Nicheparuk, representatives of city authorities and NGOs answered the questions of military attaches. The military attaches stated that they will be full-fledgedly support the issue of resolving the conflict by peaceful way. In the training centers of armed forces of Ukraine, the training of servicemen continues. At the engineering test field of the International Training Center in Lviv region, the training engineering units are being trained. They are working on such tasks as demining. Also, they work with different types of ammunition and equipment, which is used by deminers of the armed forces in their work. The trainers and the graduates of the Academy of Armed Forces named after Petro Sagaidachny. The citizens of Ukraine continue to provide support and assistance to the armed forces of Ukraine. As part of the Support Ukrainian Army action, more than 155 million hryvnias were wire transferred to the accounts of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine as the assistance to armed forces of Ukraine. Out of that amount, more than 142 million hryvnias are money transferred for material technical support and the rest for medical support of armed forces of Ukraine. With the assistance of the phone calls to the single mobile number 565 from the beginning of 2015, About 530,000 hryvnias are transferred. All this money will be used for material technical support of armed forces of Ukraine. As of today, the status of the participant of military actions was received by 8,488 servicemen and workers of the employees of the armed forces of Ukraine, participants of ATO. The Intersectoral Commission on defining the status of the participant of military action considers materials for 3,235 servicemen more. These were the brief news on the activity of the Ministry of Defense for the last 24 hours. Now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, the Speaker of ATO, Stelmakh. Anatoly, good morning. Good morning. So we are ready to hear the information about the last night's events. This night in ATO zone, it was not quite only in Donetsk direction. Here, from 22 to 23 p.m. near Dutovka coal mine, the terrorists were trying to attack the positions of Ukrainian servicemen. From 23:45 for almost an hour, the enemy was shelling at Pisky. After that, there were no cases of violation of ceasefire. There were no shellings at Mariupolsky, Lugansky, and the Debaltsevsky directions. At the same time, during the 24 hours, the bandits 7 times were shelling at the positions of ATO and the peaceful settlements from small arms, twice from tanks and 1 time from mortars. Also, 2 military clashes were registered, during which the attacks of the enemy were repelled. Besides, during yesterday, the enemy was 7 times using the drones for conducting reconnaissance near Mariupol and once near Stary Aidar, which is in Lugansk region. Despite the provocation of illegal armed groups, the Ukrainian military continued to maintain their positions. They observed the regime of the ceasefire, and they use their weapon only in response. Any questions, colleagues? Good afternoon. The question to both speakers. The first question. Recently, OSCE informed that the representatives of Russian and Ukrainian armed forces and representatives of DNR and LNR gave them the latest map with the delineation line, which was approved by everyone. Is that a new map, or is it in accordance with the previous Minsk agreements? And the second question, can you say, is there any data on the location of the armed forces along the Ukrainian border? What are the numbers and what's the situation? Are they getting accumulated? What's happening there? Anatoly, let's start from you. Our reconnaissance registers the movements of the enemy. The enemy is now concentrated in Mariupolsky direction, but what is the purpose? It's probably to ask them. Now, as to your map, I don't have any information. Our military are maintaining their positions. We do not surrender a single meter of land. The moral and psychological condition of our servicemen is good. We are not going to surrender our positions, and we are waiting for the order to withdraw heavy weaponry. I will add to what my colleague said as to withdrawal of the ATO troops to the lines in accordance with the Minsk agreements. Now there's one document which was approved during the Minsk agreement, and in accordance with this agreement, there is this delineation line made, and the sites are defined to which we will withdraw our forces, troops, artillery. We are ready to that work. We, the ATO forces, are ready to execute these tasks. Thank you. Thank you, Vladyslav. Thank you, Anatoly. Have a nice and quiet day, and see you tomorrow morning. At 1 o'clock, we will have the briefing of the Special Monitoring Mission of OSCE, Michael Batsurkiv, and you will be able to ask him about what's happening at the line, delineation line. Other sides ready to withdraw their heavy equipment. The next briefing is at 10 o'clock.